Welcome back everyone to another Undercards update. It is 3 minutes until it's actually July for me, but the update's out already anyway, the July update. This is actually the month when my birthday is, that'll be coming up soon. But anyway, quite a few changes, of course, as always. Some very interesting ones so far. I had a quick skim through. A lot of stuff that I found pretty unexpected, actually. So yeah, let's get into that. Straight away, a card that we haven't seen any changes to in a while, which has been quite interesting, is Toy Bricks, which has become a 4-4 instead of a 3-3. Which I've got to say, that looks promising to me. So if you're not aware of what this card does, because it's certainly not a popular one, it's a 4-cost 4-4 now, it used to be 3-3, haste and taunt, that when you played it, if you had 4 toy bricks in your dust pile or more, you would burn them to shuffle 10 rescue helicopters into your deck. And the rescue helicopters were 4-cost 6/6s with haste, taunt and candy, which obviously is some really good stats. Now, I actually tried to use this card before already, and I felt like it wasn't that far from being viable as it was before. I don't think it was viable, but I don't think it needed much more help. It's genuinely quite a strong finisher to just have an enormous source of cheap 6/6s with haste, taunt and candy. I mean, with taunt you can protect your face from dying to instant damage from charge. With haste you can deal with stuff on the board instantly before it can get out of control. And with candy you can heal from any trading, so unless you're taking constant enormous amounts of damage you can keep these enormous units alive to win the game off of. They've got kind of everything you need, and with so many cards in the game being really good at drawing generated cards from your deck, or just generally the fact that you've got so many of them in your deck at that point, you've got a pretty good chance of drawing them. Yeah, all you really need to do is get one more copy. Oh, sorry, it would be 2 more copies because you'd need a 5th one to play once you got 4 in your dust pile. But yeah, just 5 copies of Toy Bricks in your deck in total, just a couple copy effects. There you go. You've already got a very powerful win condition that you can easily slot into most decks. So, honestly, maybe it's a bit out there, but I could genuinely see this card being an unironic ranked card this time around. I feel like, again, it was already not that far off being good enough to be used in ranked before, even though I would say it wasn't good enough. Now, I think it's good enough. I mean, even just a 4-cost 4-4 haste and taunt, that's not bad. I mean, you do see the occasional useless bird, which has taunt and transparency, and I would say a haste and taunt is probably better. As valuable as transparency is, on a card with no other ability than taunt, which obviously has anti-synergy with transparency, obviously it's generally not as good. Second up we got Jumping Rabbit, and this is another nice change to see, because this card is interesting. I've actually looked at using this card multiple times before, even though I don't think I've ever actually put it into a deck. I've generated it, of course, and played it from generating it. But I've always thought, why don't I put this in my decks when I generate it? Because I'm like, this looks like a good card, you know. It's cost 5, it's a 4-3, it has haste, it dies, it draws me a card and puts itself back in my deck. I mean, that's really cool, isn't it? That I can have this just continuous source of direct damage that also draws me more cards. But then as I thought about it more, I'm like, well, again, draw's super efficient in Undercards. There are probably better options out there. And when I really think about this, most of the time, this is a 5-cost deal 4 damage and draw a card in the end. Is that really that great? Just punishment with draw a card on the end, except it costs an extra 2 gold. And then I start to realise, actually, yeah, it makes complete sense this doesn't see play. But maybe at 4, it does. I mean, I know that it's only 1 gold less, but at the end of the day, okay, I'll put it this way. Whether a punishment that cost 1 more to draw you 1 extra card would be good, I would say probably it wouldn't outclass punishment. I'd say punishment would usually be better on average, but I would say that it'd be decent. You know, sometimes it'd be better than punishment. However, considering this is now a punishment that costs 1 more, that draws you a card on top of that, but for all classes instead of just justice, yeah, I actually could see it being used in quite a few decks. I don't know if it'd be a proper top tier card, but it looks decent now. I could definitely see myself starting to run that in a few decks. It just depends if the card draw matters all that much, I guess. I guess we'll see. Piranhas received a buff, which actually, that's kind of interesting to me, because this card, at least in my experience, is very popular. I run into it a lot, so I wasn't really expecting it to get a buff. But it's kind of interesting to me that it got a buff, because I hardly ever ran this card. And I had considered it a couple times, and I think I did put them in like one deck I made a while ago, But for the most part, I tended to pass on this card, because as popular as it was, and as frustrating as it was to deal with, I have to admit, for a 6-drop, even though it was annoying to deal with, I wasn't sure if it was really getting all that much value. So as much as I always thought, oh, god damn it, whenever I saw the opponent play Piranhas, I wasn't sure if I would want to run Piranhas myself. So the fact that it got a buff, I'm going to guess is a signal that I was right to not run it, and that actually people were kind of getting gypped by this card, thinking it was really good when it maybe wasn't, if it needed a buff. Now at a 4/4 though? Probably, I don't know, I'd say playable, but I'm still not sure if just giving it +1 attack is that big a deal. I mean, it is a haste and a dodge. It is a haste and a dodge, but like, it's 6. It's not very cheap. It seems underwhelming for the cost still, even with the attack buff. But as I say, it's quite an annoying card to deal with when you're the victim of it, so I'm not exactly begging for it to become even stronger. We'll see how that card pans out. Anyway, Casual Undyne has gone down in cost by 1. You know, it's kind of weird. At first, I thought, what? They're buffing this card? This card's great. But now I'm realizing, oh yeah, when was the last time I used it? Because back when I did use it, I used it very often. It went in a massive amount of my decks. But I have to admit, in the past few months, when's the last time I thought, oh, actually, yeah, this deck needs Casual Undyne? So the main use I see of Casual Undyne recently is hand buff to OTK people with them. So I guess that's how this is going to go, is that you... I mean, obviously this could make them more valuable, more viable, not valuable, although I guess that also applies, in other decks as well. But the main deck that I think is happy about this is still Casual Undyne OTK, because obviously making this card cheaper makes the OTK less difficult to perform. Anyway, Popumeter. Popumeter got +1 attack. This is kind of spooky, honestly. I mean, I think this card, it was very close to being... I know I keep saying this now. I think this card was very close to being good as it was before. I think it was actually a very scary card. It was just that sometimes, depending on your hand, it would do nothing. And sometimes it just felt like, I don't know if the risk of having this do nothing is worth it. But I gotta look at this now and say this is a scary card. A 5-cost 5/4 with armor that can attack multiple times a turn. Even if it's restricted to the rightmost enemy monster, yeah, this could be some absolutely terrifying, like, board wipe kind of mechanic. Then again, it could be good with Perseverance. All I'm thinking is, what really makes this card good is Veteran, but then Veteran typically isn't super competitive. Not that it doesn't work in ranked, but like when you really get to legend rank, it tends to drop off. So I wonder if maybe it's the same deal here, where at the very top, it's going to die off even if it looks really good. Maybe it'll just be like a card that's really good at making like high but not top rank people like struggle. Maybe. We'll see. Snoelle got a buff. They went back to 3 cost when they were nerfed to 4 cost last patch. Yeah, as I say, I'm kind of behind that. As much as I acknowledge that Snoelle is a pretty powerful card, that I'm still open to receiving a bunch of changes. I didn't like the change of making her cost 4, because it just felt like... Again, as I say, I felt like it was the wrong way to go about nerfing her. I feel like it was the wrong nerf to make. Again, I agreed that control was a little too strong at the time she got the nerf, but I didn't feel like that was the correct change to address that. I think that making her 4 just made her really annoying to use. And, like, it didn't even stop people from using her if the deck really wanted to use her. It just kind of... I don't know, it was just kind of frustrating, really, if anything, and I feel like it didn't change much. So, yeah, I'm glad that it's gone back to 3. However, this is coming with a... I think it was a nerf, like a straight-up nerf to Snowgrave. Well, no, it's a rework, but generally probably leaning towards nerf. Snowgrave now no longer shuffles the ice crystals into your deck. Instead, it fills your hand with ice crystals, which is definitely worse. First of all, because, well, actually, let's get the small thing out of the way first. It means that you can't use it to prevent yourself from dying to mill, to fatigue and all that, which sucks. But as well as that, what's worse is you will almost always get less ice crystals this way, because as a control deck, you will very rarely have an empty hand. You used to get 5 ice crystals every time. Now you're going to need a hand of 2 cards or less to get the same amount of ice crystals. And yes, you will get them instantly, and yes, maybe if you high roll, you even get 7 ice crystals, a full hand of them, but like, again, I feel like the loss of consistency is overall going to take a bigger hit, especially because even if you assume the average hand size is 4 out of 7 cards in your hand, which even then, I feel like the average hand size is going to be closer to 5 or 6, but even if you just assume it's the middle number 4, then yeah, that's still only 3 crystals instead of, like, 5 that you're getting. So that's overall a nerf. However, am I against this? I'm going to have to play and find out. This is a change that I don't like the look of at first, but I have to admit, it might be right. I guess it just... Sometimes it can feel like you're already winning, and then it's just piling on the despair when Snowgrave hits. And now that it's like this, it's more of a comeback mechanic because it's less useful if your hand is empty. So I guess maybe that's what they're going for here. Well, anyway, Gardener Asgore. What does it even do now? Is it the same as it used to be? Transform a random ally to a green flower. Sorry. Transform a random ally green flower into a blue flower. If there is none, summon a red flower instead. I've never used this card, actually. I'll say this, if it didn't transform it, if instead it just gave it +4/+4, I would probably use this card. The problem is that I'm 99% sure when you transform it, it eats its attack for that turn, like it can't attack for a turn. And on a card that was already a 7 cost before, that was like very rarely worth it. I already feel like green flowers is like a weaker version of plants. It's like not the route to go generally. And this just wasn't doing it. This wasn't cutting it. Now, maybe it will. Because I do see the potential of this card. I mean, turning a 1/1 into a 5/5 taunt is, you know, it's no joke. And hey, even if it whiffs, now it's a 6 cost 6/9 in total with some transparency. Because of course, the transparency is only on the 3/3 part of it. But yeah, and you know, the worst case scenario isn't even that bad now, but it's just very slow for what's a tempo-oriented deck. But as I say, you might be able to make this fast now. It's only 1 cheaper, but it might end up making a big difference, you know. Every single piece of gold matters a lot with any kind of fast-paced get on the board before the opponent does kind of deck. So, yeah. I need to look into what generates green flowers. I know there's Flower Bin, if that's the name of it. Flower Can. Oh, that's what it's called. Yeah, I know there's this. I don't actually remember many of the other things that summon green flowers. So we got that. Asgore's Truck. Oh yeah, I don't use this card. And I maybe should use it a bit more. And Gardener Asgore. Okay, so those are the 3 ones. So I guess maybe Asgore's Truck is the most reliable here. Well, either way, we might see... I want to see we might see more of Gardener Asgore in ranked, but I don't know if I have the confidence to say it. The main issue is just that there are 2 directions you can take Plant Synergy. It feels like there's not enough room to take it both the simple tempo, you know, run Bloody Trees, run Ghost Trees, run Dark Candy Trees, and just snowball, and the separate spam, like, flowers, like green flowers, red flowers, blue flowers, whatever, and Gardener Asgore. Those seem like 2 completely separate decks, and it feels like the just push advantage, play Ghost Trees, play Bloody Trees. That just seems like the better version of the deck. So, unless I'm wrong in the assumption that this green flowers version will have to be a separate deck, unless you can combine the decks very effectively, and I'm actually wrong about that, then I think that this isn't quite where it needs to be yet, but it's not far off. Again, it's not bad stats even if it doesn't trigger the way you want it to. Frisk has been updated, and it's generally a buff. They now don't just turn all cards in your hand and deck into random Undertale Legendaries -2 cost, but instead they turn all cards in your deck only into Undertale Legendaries. You keep the cards in your hand, and you fill every empty space in your hand with Undertale Legendaries as well. This means that you now get card advantage from playing Frisk, and that you also don't lose the cards you have in your hand. So if you need certain cards to activate the abilities of Undertale Legendaries, if you have those cards that you need in your hand, you won't lose them. Overall, I think this makes Frisk not the worst DT in the game. Gasp. But, well, actually, maybe still the worst. Basically, I would say that Frisk, as fun as they were, and as haha funny as, 99 Shovels Frisk's decks were before, I gotta say that I think that Frisk before was a laughingstock of a DT, to be completely honest. And now they're more like, okay, they're not a strong option, but they're not a laughingstock anymore. There's actually you could actually use it. It wouldn't be a bad idea, maybe, if it's one of your only DTs. But definitely there's better DTs out there. I still struggle to think of a deck that wants Frisk that doesn't want any other DT. Because this just feels like it's... I don't know, maybe mid-range can... I don't know, needing to spend 50 plus gold this game feels like it's just saying, hey, this is a control card. Like what? You don't want a Mega Flower? You don't want Kara? You don't want Solus Chris? You don't want Angel of Death? You got so many good control DTs. And even if Frisk becomes a mid-range DT, even if that's possible to make that work, how many times is Frisk going to be out, fighting for a deck slot with Chris? I feel like Chris is going to win that a lot of the time. Still, as I say, I do think this is a generally positive change, going towards the right direction, but I still think Frisk needs more help in future. Redbird, my old nemesis. I swear they only ever have Redbird when it single-handedly will destroy my strategy and I have to insta-concede if they have Redbird. But anyway, they have changed Redbird, and I've got to say, this is being labelled as a buff, and I like it. Because this buff is actually secretly kind of a nerf to the thing I hate Redbird for, but buffs everything else about them. So obviously I'm 100% behind this. Redbird no longer chooses its target. It's forced to target the most expensive ally that you have on your side of the board, not including itself. But now the buff part is that you don't just turn it into a random monster at the same cost. You look at 3 monsters that you could possibly get, and you pick which one of those 3 would be the one you want. And I've heard some discussion in my Discord server that Golden Mascot is going to be an amazing hit with this, which is already a card that is honestly decent. It's just, you don't see it that often, but it's, a card that if you're running a lot of legendaries can easily become a very cheap, just 3 cost enormous taunt that also gives you an amazing control spell that's usually exclusive to Integrity, which is nice to be able to have in any soul, and is an epic, so Purple Mascot can create more duplicates of Golden Mascot if that ends up being relevant. But anyway, besides all that, this is a 13 cost card, and even when it's discounted, it still works off of base cost, I believe, which means that you could transform this into Angel of Death or Gaster, and I believe there was only one other 13 cost card in the game apparently. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but basically all 3 options were good, and you would always be able to pick which option you wanted off of it, which is obviously huge. Does it say that you can't... It doesn't even say that you can't transform it into a DT. So Angel of Death would be huge off of this, because Angel of Death leaves the lost souls when they die. They might even need to change that, unless it already does work like that and it just doesn't say on the card. They might have to change that to not be able to summon DTs. Because while most DTs, since they wouldn't trigger their on-play effects, wouldn't be that broken with this, Chris, if you can make it consistent, even though I'm guessing you wouldn't be able to, because I think there's just too many people in that cost range. But more importantly, obviously, Angel of Death is going to be insanely good with this. Librarian has also received a buff, which I gotta say, didn't see that one coming. This seemed like a pretty popular card, and it seems like it always has been, but sure, I don't mind it. It's not like it's particularly oppressive, so I guess mind that it's getting buffed. Essentially, now it has +1 attack, but it also has another change to its condition, which I really like, which is that now you can still have its effect trigger if you have generated duplicates. It's only non-generated duplicates that matter now. I don't know why this doesn't seem to apply I'll just double check. Does this not apply to library looks and other? Yeah, it's just Librarian which this counts towards, which is a bit of a shame. I would have thought they would change it for all no duplicates cards, but still, we'll see how this goes. I think this looks like a very nice change, even though this is a buff to a card that I already think is decent. I don't think it needed a buff. At the same time, again, I don't think this card's oppressive or anything. It's definitely fun, and I have to admit that this need not being able to trigger because of a generated card being shuffled randomly into your deck is super frustrating, and it's kind of bullshit that can happen, so I'm fully behind that as a buff, changing that. Anyway, that's enough of the buffs for the monsters. Now there's the reworks. Asriel's the first one up, and they've gone from a 5 cost to a 7 cost, but now their effect will affect all other ally monsters instead of just one that you pick. So, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this is usually going to be worse. Don't get me wrong, I do see that obviously when this does work in your favour, it's going to be enormous. But, I'm kind of sad about this. I kind of liked that Ralsei was, with so many legendaries are so conditional to actually be good cards, like, you know, you need so many things to line up. I kind of like that Asriel was this, like, very easy to put in a deck legendary. I imagine that's especially good for newer players as well. Like, you know, they were just a 5 cost 5/5, and sometimes they would get you some extra value from healing someone, removing silence or something, or removing paralyze for lethal. You know, most of the time they wouldn't get that much, but sometimes they'd be really useful, and they were just generally not bad tempo at a pretty reasonable cost. So it's a little sad to see them go up to 7, but at the very least it's only 7, and at 7 you can still play this turn 3. Not that I think this card usually does come down super early, but that's something. I don't know. Nah, I'm not sure I like this change, to be honest. Because it's dependent on assuming your opponent is going to have a whole bunch of Paralyze, KR, well, I suppose if you're going to counter Perseverance specifically, maybe. But even then, KR's not that worth removing. So it's mostly Paralyze and Silence that you're worried about removing, and obviously damage that you want to heal, but usually they won't leave damaged monsters alive if they can help it, so yeah, I think this is mostly just going to be there to remove Silence or Paralyze a lot of the time, and that seems so specific to want to do on a mass scale. Like, it's reasonable to want a card that can get around Silence or Paralyze for one target for a good cheap cost, but at a slightly higher cost to do it on a mass scale seems way more niche and way less generally applicable. Either way, the next change I'm more positive about. I was sad to see that they're changing Mio Mio San, because this is a card I found quite fun and I tended to use quite a lot. I'm not sure if it was really actually very good, but I certainly had fun using it. It is in any decks I put it in. So I was a bit sad to see it change at first, but the change is quite interesting, I've got to admit. It's now a 5 cost instead of a 4 cost 4/4, and when you play it, instead of halving the stats of one of your units and summoning a copy of it onto the board without triggering its on-play effects, it is now going to look at all non-DT monsters in the enemy hand and choose one. It will halve its attack of HP and add an exact copy to your hand. So you can preemptively reduce the stats of a card that your opponent is going to play while getting a reduced stats copy of it for yourself. This is interesting. I don't know if it's good is the thing though. I guess it's nice. I do like hand disruption. I think it's nice to have that in the game. I don't think it necessarily has to be meta for it to do good, but I think as long as hand disruption exists, it makes the game more healthy. It prevents metas where people can hold things in their hand and just wait for a certain turn where they have this card in their hand that will just instantly end the game and screw you up and just, well, that's the end of the game, you know. That's not really very fun. So I like it when hand disruption exists, and this is obviously hand disruption, but obviously it's not hand disruption in the way I expected. You know, we're used to things like Teach Tutorial. This is kind of different, because specifically it won't mess with their effects, it'll only mess with their stats. So it would have to be something where the stats of the card are important to what it does. So I guess this really screws over hand buff decks, but other than hand buff, what does this really hit? Unless you get a lot of value from the copy yourself, but considering it's got halved stats, I'm not sure there's that much stuff that you'd really want. And most of the stuff you would really want is DTs. Like, I almost thought for a second, no wait, this is good, because you could use it to halve Chris's stats preemptively and deal with that, like nib that in the bud, but then Chris is a DT, so you couldn't. I guess it's good against hastes. Actually, no, that's a genuine one. It's pretty good against hastes. It will like prevent your opponent from being able to wipe your board sometimes, because you'll be like, okay, I'm pretty sure somewhere in their hand they're going to have an answer to this, but I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to play Mio Mio San. Oh, yeah, you had this answer. Well, now I'm going to halve its stats. So it's going to deal less damage when it does its haste attack. But even then, like, you have to pay an extra 5 gold for Mio Mio San. Will the damage prevention that Mio Mio San puts in really outweigh the damage prevention of just playing a taunt? I'm not sure about that. Either way, I like this design, I'm just not sure if it will be good or not. Hard to say. Well, anyway, Big Bomb got reworked. Its ability was kind of stupid, to be honest, anyway, so I'm kind of glad that it's changed. It now still kills all other monsters, but now, instead of it being this weird condition of, oh, you need to have, I think, was it 7 health monsters in your hand, or it's exactly 7 cost, or whatever, and then burn that random card. It was weird before. Now it just burns your entire hand, but it's now an 8 cost 10/10, and now it does it instantly. Now, I like this, I think, overall. I'm just having a funny moment where I'm like, wait, is there a way that you could use like action figures to silence this and add it back to your hand? But even then, it's just bananas with like a 1 cost discount, so I don't even think that's worth it. But it's funny. Well, anyway, hey, this is being recorded later. Just for me to quickly say, that actually might not be a dumb idea. You see, I have to admit, when I was talking about this card, I had a misunderstanding that I just realised now while editing. I thought that this card would also kill itself when it blew up, but I just realised it says kill all other monsters. So of course it would still wipe most of your side of the board, but you would still get this as a 10/10. So yeah, it might genuinely not be a super bad idea to drop a big bomb and then run it with action figures to get more big bombs afterwards, so that you have these constant 10/10s hitting the board after you've just wiped the entire board for 8. That could genuinely be pretty good. Lost my place there for a second. Okay, so this is interesting. This might look really stupid, but I think there are genuinely certain decks which will love this card. First of all, Purple Mascot. I know I keep bringing it up, but I really think it's an underrated card that can do a lot to both generate a ton of value for decks while also improving consistency. If this is the only epic in your deck, with Purple Mascot, you can have essentially 5 cards in your deck that lead to an instant board wipe for only 8 of the entire board, an 8 cost Hypergoner. Now yes, it burns your entire hand and Hypergoner doesn't do that. However, even though it burns your entire hand, there are so many draw mechanics that get stronger when you have less cards in this game that I think some decks it literally won't matter. That might be a stretch, but I think it literally won't matter for some decks. First of all, Bravery. If you time it so that you are going to play your Big Bomb the turn before your passive triggers, so that next turn you'll have a card from your deck and 2 recruitments, then you've still got 3 cards in your hand the turn after you play this extremely cheap and powerful board wipe. So you're not in a bad spot there. And that's without having any kind of draw artifacts that you could add into the equation to help with that, or just draw cards in your deck in general. What's especially interesting as well, even though this is Bravery is probably the more realistic one, what is an interesting consideration still though, is potentially Adrenaline. As much as a meme as it sounds, if you could run Adrenaline with your deck, you could just have one time that you could drop a big bomb and then just refill your hand easily, basically for free. Now, that is going to be a bit difficult because Adrenaline is a legendary artifact. So it depends if you need those other artifact slots for your deck to work. I actually am not sure. You see, I feel like this is a question Control hasn't had to ask themselves that much recently, because usually with Control, I've not actually been able to measure too much how important the artifacts that we use are in Control, because a lot of the time, none of the legendary artifacts really help Control out. The main one that does is Science, but even then I believe like you really need to have a deck that benefits specifically from token cards or Gaster Blasters specifically to want Science. I don't know, maybe I'm just blanking on something right now, but I don't know of any other legendary artifacts that control decks really commonly want to use. So usually we just run 2 commons, and usually it's just some health gain or maybe ambition. So it's going to be interesting now that we can ask ourselves, wait, do we actually want health gain artifacts, or can this control deck survive without the health gain artifacts and then run adrenaline so they can run big bombs? Going to be an interesting consideration. Overall, I am fully behind this change. I really like it, and I think it's going to lead to some really interesting situations. I also want to say that I'm noticing there is a lot more use of the word burn in this game. And I'm not talking about like a full-on archetype, that would be a bit stupid. But I think it would be interesting to see some kind of burn synergy cards in the coming future, if that's not already something they have planned. I just get the feeling that that's what they're trying to do, especially when cards like Microwave exist, and I look at them and I think, not that this card is complete garbage, but clearly it's not good, and why does it exist like this? It feels very weird. Oh, yeah, let me quickly get a Microwave for those who don't know. Yeah, Microwave is a 1-cost 2/2 taunt magic burner card in your hand. I have used this card unironically one time in a deck which was using Arcade Machine, because sometimes Arcade Machine couldn't trigger because you had a dead card that you couldn't play in your hand that was preventing its effect from triggering. And you could burn the dead card in your hand using Microwave to enable Arcade Machine. That was the only time I ever used this card unironically, and that's the only synergistic use I've found for it. Other than that, it's just a slightly overstated 1-drop with a downside. And it feels like it's supposed to be used for something, but I just haven't found anything it's used for. And I know that some of you don't know what Arcade Machine does. It's a card which gives every single card in your hand -3 cost if your hand has no cards of the same rarity. So, yeah. Anyway, that's quite a long one. On to Snail Trainer. Oh, you know what? I think I just skimmed past this one without even really reading it. Like I said, I just took a quick look at this list beforehand. Snail Trainer, now you have 10 or more snails in your dust pile, so it went back to dust pile. And it adds Thunder Snail to your hand. That's not blue anymore, the text, so I assume that's the same, because it doesn't say anything about Thunder Snail being different here. Huh. Is that a nerf? It seems like a nerf. Actually, maybe it's not a nerf. Nah, okay, it seems generally like a nerf, but I don't think it's that hard a nerf, because before it was you needed 2 on the board. And I can imagine that might be annoying sometimes, but then most of them cost 1. And this is going to make this slower. I don't know. Again, I don't play snails, I don't know. I'm not thought that much about snails. Angel Doll is now getting completely reworked to a 5-cost 4/3 that with a completely different effect. That it removes a random other non-determination, non-token monster from your dust pile to summon it with 1 health remaining. Now, I haven't looked through the collection, but that sounds like the kind of effect that could be huge on the right target. I especially like the idea... Oh, wait, no. I was about to say, I especially like the idea of running this with toy bricks to get those extra copies, since that would be a high-tempo way, like a way that wouldn't sacrifice much tempo of being able to generate more, but actually it removes them from the dust pile, so it wouldn't generate more in the dust pile. It would just make it the same. But yeah, definitely there's cards with this that would work well with it. I like this as well, because I already thought that, like, the old Angel Doll, I did use it a decent amount, and that's not necessarily because I thought the card, because I liked the way the card was designed. Not that I didn't like it, I liked Dust Synergy, but I always thought it was a bit weird, because it felt like it was doing the same job as abstract art, but in a clunkier way, and it also felt really out of flavour. I know it's literally like a doll, but like, the idea of this Angel Doll being something that kills something and then brings it back to life felt weird to me, so I think the idea of resurrecting it with 1 health left is much more interesting. But I'm very surprised it says no cost restriction on it, on a 5-cost unit with not awful stats. Because, I mean, okay, again, I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but I'm just saying, you could resummon, like, you know, 15-cost cards with this. That's going to be interesting. I wonder if there's anything with a good amount of dodge that could be really degenerate with this. I could see that happening. Well, this with... This with maybe pies from cauldrons, or maybe you just run Pie and Kindness on its own. Man, there's a lot of interesting things there for this card. That's going to be one to think about. I like this change overall, though. Nothing but positive things to say about that, except maybe it'll be bad for balance, but of course we don't know yet. Marathon Fountain received a nerf, which is interesting to me. I kind of wasn't expecting that. So it used to be a 2-5, and it's obviously recently been changed. It used to be a taunt with 1 attack that couldn't attack, and now it's a haste. It being a haste is not bad, to be fair. I thought it would be pretty bad as a haste and not a taunt, but it's definitely worse, but it still does its job pretty well. In the right decks, it really actually does quite a lot. But I'm wondering what was problematic enough that they thought they needed to nerf it. Because the only thing I could think of that might have been too strong with this is this with ultimate heal, so that it has like 20 health and that you can just heal constantly with it. But then, I didn't see ultimate heal decks running this card, so I assume it didn't make the cut. And if that's the case, and even if it was the ultimate heal decks that were a problem, then, you know, you'd expect that it wouldn't just nerf the health by 1. That doesn't stop ultimate heal. Like, it's like, oh great, now this card that used to give me 21 health is only going to give me 20 health now. Oh, boo-hoo, you know. So, yeah, this catches me off guard a bit. Anyway, Ugly Fish, of all things, got nerfed. That's kind of interesting, though. Wait, Ugly Fish. Oh, it's... base cards don't show up in the collection unless you tap this button, even though that's supposed to be to show token cards. Why are they on the same one? Anyway. Yeah. So, Ugly Fish used to be an 8 cost, and now they're a 9 cost, and they're a 5/5 that sends an enemy monster back to the enemy hand. So, a lot of you are probably pretty surprised this card got nerfed, because from what I saw, this was not a popular card. Not many people were using it, but I was starting to wonder if it was good, and this almost feels like confirmation that maybe I was onto something that they felt the need to nerf it. Because usually, I'm not usually one that's super excited for any kind of effect that just puts it back in the enemy's hand instead of actually dealing with it. But in Undercards, when you just want an answer to something on the board that puts you in an awful situation, like, I feel like a lot of the time in Undercards, what wins the game is just you having one turn where, like, you put something pretty threatening on the board and the opponent just doesn't have the answer in their hand. They probably have the answer somewhere in their deck, but maybe in that one turn they just either don't have enough gold saved or they don't have it in their hand, and then they lose. And I feel like by having Ugly Fish, you have this guaranteed delay for a turn, and maybe that one turn was all you needed, and you just get back in the game. Not to mention, it's really, really good tempo, because if they never get to play that thing again, which could be a real problem, considering how easy it is to draw cards in Undercards, and how much harder it is to have the gold to spend to play all those cards, if they never get the chance to play that card again, then you have essentially played an 8-cost 5/5 that instantly killed an entire unit for no real condition. Not to mention, you can kind of do that already if they got a full hand when they end their turn. But obviously that's, you know, that's another thing completely, but yeah. So yeah, I would even venture to say maybe Ugly Fish is still good at 9, maybe. I'm not certain, but I wouldn't be that surprised if I still saw some people running it at high ranks, because it just, as unsuspecting and underwhelming as it seems, it just feels like it does exactly what you would want in Undercards to avoid those situations of, well, I should have won in the long term, but then I just had this one turn where I didn't have the damage, or I just had this one turn where if I had one more gold I would have done it. The amount of games I've lost because I was 1 gold off either the game-winning play or the play that would have saved my life and then kept me in the game long enough to get to my win condition, which I was probably going to win in the late game anyway, but then I just died barely on 1 turn where I was 1 gold off being able to save myself. Just delaying it even a turn is actually so valuable. But then I guess now it costs 9, you can only carry 1 extra gold over to the next turn, unless you've got other effects in play, so it's something to think about, I guess. Bloody Tree receives a nerf, but a pretty justified one, I will say. I'm actually not too unhappy about this, even as a Bloody Tree lover and a plant deck lover. I think this this nerf is pretty fair, all things considered. Bloody Tree was just a stupid card. I guess not busted, but like, it just was a 4-cost 3/6 that got more attack over time. And even though it's not very flashy, it meant that it very rarely died the turn it was played. It very often got to snowball, It very often established early board control. It was very often played in decks with no synergy with it, just because it was a good card to play on turn 4. It just did a lot for you. And it's not even like as a 4-5 it's not going to be good anymore. It's still going to be fine. It's just not going to be quite as unkillable the turn it's played. Even still, this still demands a lot of resources for turn 2 to be removed from the board. So yeah, I think that this card's going to be fine. It's just going to be slightly less stupid. And maybe it won't see as much play in decks that don't have plant synergy that are just running Bloody Tree because it's Bloody Tree. But plant synergy decks probably still run it. And maybe, bit of a stretch, maybe it brings back Ficus. Not Ficus Liquor, Ficus. Maybe Ficus becomes slightly playable now. Because that's the other thing, I have to admit. The existence of Bloody Tree makes Ficus useless. And now at least Ficus has 1 health extra on Bloody Tree. Side note, can we get a small buff to Ficus? I would like to see it either be gaining +2 attack for every plant that dies, or just make it a 3/6. Because I feel like even still, it's almost always worse than Bloody Tree, even now after the nerf. And it's a shame because I don't even think this card's like that bad. It's just Bloody Tree is better, and it's fighting for the same slot. I guess they could go another route. They could make this like a 5-drop instead and give it a stronger ability or a better stat line or whatever. Whatever they do, they need to make it so that Ficus isn't just obsolete compared to Bloody Tree. Ideally without killing Bloody Tree either, making them both usable. Business Snail has now been changed to not grant 1 gold anymore when the snail dies. They just give you a card, not a card and 1 gold. So I'm just going to guess that, again, I didn't really see much snail decks, I didn't play them, I wasn't interested in snails. I'm going to guess that gaining 1 gold for every dead snail when most snails cost 1 meant that you could very quickly cycle through your entire deck, which could lead to degenerate combos. I'm not sure if that was actually overpowered or anything, or if it was just annoying. But yeah, I kind of agree with this change. I do think it's sad. I do want to see a couple more gold generation abilities in this game, as long as they're not too easy to activate. But I do think it's very irresponsible to make a card that generates more gold every time a card dies, specifically for a synergy made to spam 1-cost cards. Because that's just begging for you to have this just unit spam of, oh, I pay 1 to play this and I gain 1 gold and I draw a card, and I pay 1 to play this and I gain 1 gold and I draw a card, and I pay 1 to play this and I draw... You get the point. So yeah, probably still one of the better cards in the Snail package after the nerf still. Muffet receives a nerf. Thought it was coming at some point. A little bit later than I expected, but it got one. Muffet is now a 9. It's still a 9-cost 7/9, but well, actually, oh no, I misread it. I thought it said that the cost went up to 10 on the notes there, but that's for the Vessel. Yeah, it's still a 9-cost 7/9, but now it no longer adds a spider cross onto your deck on the turn end. It still does it on the delay, but it doesn't do it on the turn end. It just adds a spider donut to your hand. I gotta say, yeah, I mean, I overall am in favour of this change, but I gotta say it's a little bit... I kind of like the shuffle. I'm kind of sad that they didn't go the opposite direction of taking away the card advantage and giving you more shuffle. But I suppose that might be an over nerf, maybe. I don't know. Well, anyway, I don't think it actually changes that much. I think that Muffet's still pretty strong, to be honest, but it's a change. The Vessel receives a nerf, which actually was kind of unexpected. So they reverted it back to what it used to be, that now it only gives you 3 copies of the card that you copy. It used to be 1 in your hand and 3 in your deck. Now it's 1 in your hand and 2 in your deck. Which, that I think is justified. That I think is fair. That I would expect. But I don't mind it too much. I still think the Vessel's really good like that. However, making it cost 10, I wasn't expecting that. That caught me off guard. So, I mean, it's just 1 more, and fortunately it's not 11. If it hit that point of 11 where you can't even afford to play it, even if like from all the gold you get in 1 turn, that would be a big problem. But still, especially because you almost always have to play this on the same turn as the thing you want to copy. That's kind of spooky that they've changed this. But In fairness, the Vessel is a very strong card that enables a lot of very powerful decks, very powerful even OTKs. I know that I'm not sure if it was common on ladder, but one deck that probably I struggled to beat more than any other whenever I ran into it last season was a deck where you Vesseled Metaton Neo. Sorry, Metaton EX. Wait, no, it is Neo. Blech. Getting mixed up now. Metaton Neo with the Bravery spell that gives a +1 attack and haste, and you use the multiple copies of Metaton Neo to just spam face damage and guaranteed OTK them. And you obviously run a deck that burns through your deck super fast, so you get to Metaton Neo and the Vessel really quickly. So yeah, I suppose probably decks like that were doing really, really well. Bit of a shame because of course this card's really fun, but yeah. Probably still playable. I still think the Vessel's going to be a good DT. Probably still one of the better ones, but maybe not the best. At 10, maybe not the best. Anyway, Brain Shift has received a straight up buff. It costs 1 less. Which, at first, this kind of surprised me, because this already seems like one of the better PV spells, but I have to say that I don't think this is going to be busted or anything at 4. I don't know, I feel like the main problem is PV's just in a bit of a weird state right now. I don't know, maybe I need to play more of it, maybe this is me just not understanding PV, but it feels like they've got a very small niche of decks that, like, take board advantage and push it hard. And then they've got all these control spells. And I feel like a control PV deck just isn't really a thing. And I don't know why they have so many control-y kind of spells for a class that feels like it has very little payoff compared to other classes for trying to go control. So I hope that they get more tools for like late game strategies in the future. It's not that the tools that they have are bad, it's just that a lot of... I don't see the win condition, the late game what you do, unless you just do it winning just purely off of neutral cards. Things you could already do. I don't know, I think maybe it's just that Patience is too good, because, you know, just the search with the passive is really good on Patience, and I don't know. And then you got to compete with Justice as well. Like Justice has got such amazing control spells. Yeah, I think that's the problem. I think it's just that it's not that PV control spells are bad. It's that they're competing with Patience and Justice, and to an extent DT as well with Hypergunner. Although after the nerf, Hypergunner isn't exactly an auto include anymore. Well, anyway, we already talked about Snowgrave, which just leaves Expulsion, which received a small, slightly sad nerf, but I imagine it was very justified. That it no longer gives you the choice to target your own monsters to refund its cost, and be able to get that monster played twice. I am guessing there was some kind of degenerate strategy if they made that change. Because obviously, otherwise, this would be a dumb change, because, like, it was almost always the strongest option to target opponents anyway, so targeting your own stuff was just a small playmaking opportunity that maybe, hey, in this situation, you could do something smarter by targeting your own monster. So I'm guessing if they removed this, there was a good reason, there was something very degenerate you could do with it. So yeah, I guess I'm alright with that. And lastly, Prosperity has been updated. When you play a monster that costs 4 or more, it heals 1 health to you, but it no longer will stack. You can't get more than 1 healing off of it. And I think that's kind of sad, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. I liked the new Prosperity, and now we're back to the old one, except now it's just 4 or more instead of 5 or more. But, I mean, I have to admit, Prosperity was really doing well. I'm guessing that they have access to the stats. I don't know if when they looked at the stats of, like, win rates of Prosperity, maybe they were really high. I could see it. I don't know, it's one of those things with Prosperity where I could see Prosperity being overpowered, and I do use it a lot, but it didn't feel overpowered to me. Well, anyway, I have been waiting for this moment. I've been very excited for the end of this month because I get to make another DT. The only thing is... Okay. I used to think, you know, I can't wait to get my next DT because no matter which one it is, I don't mind because I desperately want Chris, I really want to figure out if everyone's overhyping Ultima Thresh or not, because every time I run into Ultima Thresh, I basically never lose to it, but then people tell me Ultima Thresh is actually really good, so obviously it's like, oh, it'll be interesting to try that out and figure out if it's actually as good as people say. And then there's Spamton Neo, and I used to think, oh yeah, even Spamton Neo, I'd be happy to get him, because, you know, I'm really interested to see. I didn't think he'd be as bad as people are saying. I don't know, maybe I'll find a way to make him good. But honestly, now I am scared. I am thinking, actually, if I get Spamton Neo, I'm not going to be happy. And you know, I feel like there is no way I click this button and it gives me anything other than Spamton Neo at this point with my luck. So, we'll see if that's true. Okay, never mind. It gave me exactly what I wanted more than anything. Jesus Christ, I finally have Chris. Oh my god. Yeah, I have really wanted this card. It's kind of a shame that obviously now I've got him. It's like after the point where they were really good. But hey, I mean, from what I hear, it sounds like most people don't think Chris is that good anymore, but he looks really good to me still. Like, definitely not as good as he was at his peak, but I don't know. To me, this card still looks like a monster, but maybe I'll find out that's not quite as true when, you know, I actually play them. But either way, I'll be very excited to try them out. And I'm especially excited about this because I feel like there's a lot of decks that Chris can fit into that most DTs can't. Because obviously Chris is kind of a mid-range card, and there aren't really many mid-range DTs. There's, again, maybe at a stretch Frisk. There's maybe at a stretch Omega Flowey, and there is the Heroine. And that's basically it. So obviously having Chris is going to be a really nice and very welcome addition. Well, anyway, let me just cap this off by doing an epic pack opening. I'm going to start a habit of saving up at least 5,000 gold before a season end, so that in case there's any new cards, I might get them in the packs. But yeah, I'm just going to open a whole bunch of packs, just because why not? I can talk about the patch a little bit while I do that. And also, I'm going to just literally, I know it's extremely low chance, as in, you know, that kind of low chance. I'm fishing for that DT, you know. I know that it's very unlikely, but I want that shot at another DT. And either way, I'm at the point where I own every single craftable card in the game, and I'm pretty sure I own max copies of every single one as well. So, like, I want the dust, actually, because usually I don't do this. I usually don't care about shiny cards in games, but because I'm at the point where I own every card I need, I'm actually crafting shiny legendaries right now, and I'm going to try and get to the point where I have an entire collection of shiny legendaries. I'm obviously not going to bother with shiny DTs. Jesus, I'm not... I'm not that much of a Termini Online, no-life degenerate. But shiny legendaries, I can do that. Either way, predictions for this meta, not exactly 100% certain, but I would say it's looking to be Control. I know that it's been Control already recently. You know, the first half of last month was Control, and then it moved more towards kind of like, well, I heard it was kind of, to be fair, I didn't play as much towards the end of the month, but I personally started losing a lot more with Control, and I heard from most people that it was like usually one extreme or the other, either super fast decks or super slow decks. I think we are going to go back into a Control deck meta here, just because it seems like there's a lot of cards that seem really strong for the late game, with Toy Bricks maybe actually being a real thing now, and I imagine that would be Control. It could be mid-range if you can do it fast, but that seems like a Control thing. With the buff to Snoelle, reverting their cost increase, with the changes to the Big Bomb, especially, I'm going to be very interested to see if that actually pops off now. That new version of Big Bomb actually becomes like a seriously scary card. I suppose the only reason it might not be a Control meta is I'm not sure if Control has the survival tools, especially because if I didn't have the survival tools, one of the first cards I would have started experimenting with to see if it helped would probably have been MTT Fountain, which just got nerfed as well. So, going to be interesting to see, but Angel Doll especially seems like some big high rolls. And, oh yeah, I knew there was one I was forgetting. The Redbird change, yeah. I'm not sure if it works how I think it works, but I can't see how Redbird won't be stupid broken and the entire meta for until the next patch, if you can just play Golden Mascot and Redbird. Oh, hello, tutorial. If you can just play Golden Mascot and Redbird and just get an Angel of Death. Like, if you can do that multiple times a game, there's your win condition. And that's not even a super expensive combo, because you're going to have the, like, Golden Mascot discounted all the way down to 3. It's going to be an 8 gold combo to play a 4/3 with an Angel of Death. Jesus Christ, like, that seems really scary. So, unless that's wrong, unless it's not going to work like how I think it is, it might even be, I see a Redbird meta being a thing. Although maybe Redbird does work off of base current cost and not base cost. How much dust is that? That's 3,410 dust. Wait, yeah, okay, there we go. It did it. That shall help to contribute to my collection of shiny legendaries. As you can see, I'm making some steady progress in getting them all nice and shiny. Nearly at the halfway mark, I would say, in general. I say as I go to a page where I have 0 shinies of all of these, but hey, we're getting there, we're getting there. Anyway, how much is it again? Wait, no, that's the disenchant, I already have that one, it's 3,200. Yeah, so I could get another one right now, but I'll have to think about which one I want. Anyway, I guess I'll check what the first season quest is. Oh, season start quest, I mean. Spend 500 gold on Undertale cards, play 50 cost-reduced cards, and play 25 monsters costing 1 gold or less. Well then, I guess thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. We'll see how this meta pans out. Goodbye.